To be able to meet our needs, become our authentic selves, and set our boundaries with confidence instead of guilt, we need to view the world in a constructive way first. So I get a lot of questions on how to set boundaries. What people often don't understand is that the reason that we're struggling to set boundaries is not because we don't have the ability, because we're born with that ability, but it's because of certain toxic family dynamic rules that we have learned that we don't have the right to, or that we should be ashamed of our needs and boundaries, etc. So we need to reconstruct that view first. We need to reset our view. Are you a people pleaser? Are you afraid of offending others or letting others down? Saying no? Do you often feel you're a burden? Do you struggle with your emotions? Don't you really know who you are? Our view of the world prevents us from meeting our true needs and from setting our boundaries properly. Our view of the world is the view of our family dynamics, which, when toxic, taught us to be accepted instead of to accept ourselves, leaving us not understanding our own emotions and feeling we don't have the right to stand up for ourselves. So normally what happens in childhood is we are taught the right balance between meeting our needs, so our needs will be validated even if they contradict our parents' needs, and affirmed, and we will be taught to set our boundaries, and that will be respected. Of course, taking into account other people's emotions. So for instance, if you feel the need to have a cookie, that's great, that can be validated, but you cannot just take someone else's cookie. You need to ask for it. So normally in healthy family dynamics, the child's needs are seen, are taken seriously, boundaries are being taught. But in other family dynamics, unfortunately, it doesn't go that way. The child doesn't learn to accept itself. It learns that you need to be accepted by us. So it will focus all its attention to be accepted by the parent, leaving there no development of setting its own boundaries or meeting their own needs. When we carry that into adulthood, we will be focused on being approved of by other people and accepted, instead of approving of ourselves, meeting our own needs, setting our boundaries, following our own dream. So what's important now is that we reset our toxic view back to healthy view settings by becoming aware of our family dynamics, first of all. Understanding the difference between toxic and healthy family dynamics. For instance, if you really believe that you need to always be there for your parents and that your needs come second, that's toxic, that's not healthy. And that will prevent you from meeting your needs in adulthood or setting boundaries without guilt or shame. Okay? So children from toxic family dynamics learn early on not to need, through words and deeds, tones and silences, that their parents' needs take precedence over them, and that their own needs boundaries are often problematic or cause for resentment. Sometimes they can even receive the silent treatment. These children become ashamed of their normal needs and will mask their vulnerabilities and bury their feelings. They will learn to fear and hate their own human vulnerability instead of being confident about it. Because children can't make sense of the parents' tricks and stunts, they internalize shame. I keep failing my mom, dad, which leads to anger that the child turns on himself. I'm so stupid. There's something wrong with me. When narcissistic parents disapprove of the children, or other toxic parents for that matter, with toxic parents or narcissistic parents, I mean parents who are dominated by their ego and not their true self. Their defense mechanism is dominated, and which will have an effect on us. So when narcissistic parents disapprove of the children, when crying, being too shy, experiencing fear, or too much happiness, the children learn that their feelings are erratic, unsafe, and a source of problems. They can end up suppressing it with substance use, eating disorders, other impulsive, compulsive lifestyles, and self-harm, because they haven't learned how to soothe themselves in a healthy way. When narcissistic parents blend empathy with passive aggression to communicate, like the silent treatment, the children will think they are always at fault and can become people pleasers in adulthood, intimidated by authority, always worried about offending, angering others, or they can repeat this communication form and become narcissistic themselves. The narcissistic parent oscillates between love bombing, when the child is behaving according to the narcissist standard, to the parent's standard, and discarding when the child is acting otherwise. The love, therefore, will be conditional, based on what the child does and gives rather than who the child is. This will lead to fear of rejection in adulthood, and is also a classic example of the imposter syndrome. These children naturally feel empty, frightened, and angry about their parents' neglect, but constantly receive the message that the parent is above reproach. These narcissistic fathers may be touted for being generous and dedicated providers, and these mothers for being loving, self-sacrificing caregivers. For the child dealing with a very different reality, the neglect becomes that much harder to recognize and make sense of. Often it's easier for the child to deny reality or blame her or himself than to admit that the family line is a lie, and that the care they are getting is tragically deficient. So the child won't dare to question in adulthood this toxic view. Though the narcissist child requires love, affection, flexibility, and encouragement, he or she receives the continuous message that their needs are unreasonable and insulting even. And that's why that leads to embarrassment in adulthood when expressing their needs. It takes these children years of frustration and anguish to figure out that mom or dad isn't quite right. Until that point, these children are merely dancing as fast as they can, trying to please the impossible, trying to please the narcissistic parent. By understanding these family dynamics, our own family dynamics, what was healthy about it and what was toxic about it, only then we can start viewing the world in a healthy way and meet our true needs and set our boundaries with confidence instead of guilt. So when we finally realize that we have the right and that we should be proud about our needs and our boundaries, that in other healthy family dynamics, the same thing that we got punished for or shamed for they were prided for. As soon as we realize that, that will help us to set our boundaries properly. The second post, the third pink post, continues and talks more about the black sheep of the family and the golden child of the family. So there we go. Have you always felt you're a problem child? Do you often feel you're a burden? Are you always afraid of not measuring up, disappointing others? A narcissistic parent is not bad, but lacks the ability to take the blame in general and to meet the child's emotional needs necessary for good parenting. For us to be able to meet our child's needs, our needs need to have to be met, or we need to understand how our needs haven't been met, and to be able to regulate and cope with our own emotions. Otherwise, we're going to pass these dynamics on to our children, leaving these parents no other option than to deflect their inability by subconsciously creating a scapegoat and a golden child to protect their image. The scapegoat will be ostracized for needing being. The golden child will be praised for not needing being. The child with a strong personality will be labeled as stubborn, so it will feel it's a problem child, which is called scapegoating. The golden trophy child will be praised for being a good kid, not being needy. And for being, with good kid, I mean good kid. Because a good kid is supposedly a kid that meets its needs, but according to a narcissistic parent is a need that suppresses his needs. And will try to become the parent's ideal. Basically, a message is sent with these family dynamics to everyone to suppress their true needs self. By shaming you when you express your needs or you start questioning the family dynamics, and by praising you for just shutting up and doing what the parent wants, and by praising you for that. It sounds harsh. Unfortunately, it also is harsh. Defense mechanisms can be hardcore. It's not the scapegoat's character of actions that caused their banishment. It's the way they have been experienced by the dysfunctional family parent, who for their own unexamined reasons needs to punish the scapegoat for provoking discomfort that is actually a result of the parent's own unresolved issues. That's why it's so important for parents to or resolve their issues or become aware of their own frustrations, etc., to not pass it on to their children. The scapegoat will be wanting to explain itself, but learns that if it tries to sort this out, it will be accused of playing the victim. So the scapegoat is the child, and all the problems of the family will be projected onto the child because the parent cannot take the blame, basically. The ego cannot handle that. The child understands this treatment is not right, that it's being blamed for things that it hasn't done, for the family's sins, basically, until one day it gives up and moves into accepting a fate that makes no sense. Very tragic. The golden child's longing, so the child that is the good child, by the way, the roles can switch according to the circumstances. A child can be the golden child and the black sheep. The golden child's longing is not to revolutionize nations and be honored across the ages. It's to be accepted and loved for who it is, to have its faults and frailties forgiven and acknowledged rather than denied or glossed over. Very important, this. It is, in the end, as much of an insult to one's authentic reality and painful to be praised for great things one hasn't done and could never do, as to be attacked and blamed for sins one is innocent of, like the scapegoat. So if you think, at least I wasn't the scapegoat, I wasn't the black sheep of the family, think again. Because being the golden child can be sometimes more problematic. Black sheeps of the family have a higher chance of getting out of these toxic dynamics and having healthy relationships in adulthood. Golden child, unfortunately, is trapped in a golden cage. The golden child learns nothing about introspection and its true self and sees love as transactional. You do well for me, you earn my love. It's clueless about how it's been affected by the narcissistic parent and struggles because it's learned to go along to get along. It's not a formula for happiness. Unfortunately, the golden child is unlikely to change since it's disinclined to look past the family mythologies. By understanding our family dynamics, what was healthy and what toxic, we can reclaim our power. Please leave some feedback or suggestions. It's really welcome. Hope this was helpful. Thanks.